Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 2CTV and the first live stream of the day. We're going to talk about the Middle East and of course the effects of it and the impact when it comes to the Western world, all our countries. Obviously over the last few decades we've had globalism bringing in Islamism and of course a lot of people from the Middle East and North Africa. This has not really worked, has it? At best. But there's also the fight back that is actually coming from the Middle East, at some places at least, not everywhere. And in this video, we're going to talk about the latest update we have from Iran. The Iranian uprising continues, despite the fact that there is absolutely no international support for the Iranian people, because of course a lot of the Western globalists, including Joe Biden's administration, are happier to just deal with the existing dictatorship in Iran, and they would rather see a weak Iran but chaotic compared to having an actual strong and equal partner. Last time they did that, they panicked when they had the Shah of Iran. We had Jimmy Carter betraying him and helping the Islamo-fascists and communists taking over. Hello to everybody in the live chat. We're going to be talking about the latest footage. We have the collection of videos from Iran. Of course, over the last couple of years, they've been protesting. They've been, obviously, the parts of Iran is actually internal civil conflict between the actual Iranian regime, the Revolutionary Guard, and the militias and everybody else, ordinary people. And considering there's no support, it's very difficult to see how sustainable this movement could be without any sort of push from the outside. Now, Iranian people have been very clear they don't want any Western intervention in that sense, but they do want support. They want their voices to be heard, but again, CNN, BBC, Sky, all these channels are ignoring them. This is about the younger generation in Iran who are rejecting dictatorships. They are rejecting Islamism. They are rejecting the religion itself, and the difference between the Iranians and many others in the Middle East and in that part of the world. So there are other places where they did uprising and revolutions recently, and they got rid of the secular dictators and they replaced them with some Islamist nutters like Taliban. It's because those countries, they never had the culture that's familiar with democracy or constitutions or anything like that. The Iranians had it. Iranians had constitutional monarchy. They already had parliamentary democracy to an extent. Obviously, then things kicked off. So it's in their culture to do liberal democracy already, and that they had their first Charter of Human Rights. But let's go to this video. These are the young generation who want to correct the mistakes of their parents and their grandparents by fighting against the Islam as a faith and as obviously a political ideology. This video has subtitles.
اصلا برای بچه‌م قرآن پخش نکنید. بچه‌م از قرآن متنفر بود.
Yes, we've been now familiar with all this footage over the last couple of years. They keep coming out, but again, as a reminder what we're dealing with. For example, the first scene that we saw there, one of the first footage, saying no to Islam, no to Quran, I'll give my life only for Iran. There's also another chant that wasn't actually included in this footage collection, is the recent chant over the last month or so. They say no to Gaza, no to Lebanon. My life is only for Iran. And they're also saying that the mother that was screaming in the second video that you saw, that was a funeral of her son, and obviously his life was they took away his life. The Islamic Republic of Iran. She said, "No one should play Quran here. My child hated it." And then they're saying, "May both Islam and Quran die for the sake of Iran." Let's not forget what Iran was before the 1979 paramilitary coup that basically brought in it was the brotherhood of socialists, communists, and Islamists who made this happen with the help of CIA and France and elements of MI6, betrayed the king of Iran, the last Shah, and now we're in this mess. The Iranians were, by nature, over the last, at least since the 20th century, beginning of 20th century onwards, but secular people. You could be Christian, you could be a Jew, you could be a Muslim, just keep it to yourself. You don't have to shout about it. But then, obviously, since 1979, everything changed. That's why we have all these chants still going around. It's fascinating how there are only a couple of countries right now leading this fight against this radical ideology. You have, for example, in Iran, Iranians doing it, but you also have Poland. In Europe, Poland is one of the few countries, rare countries, that is actually directly standing up against this. And of course, mass migration from the Islamic world, saying, nope, we do not want any illegal migrants from the Islamic world. And of course, the other Westerners are freaking out, saying, that is not politically correct, Poland. You need to take in more illegal migrants. No, shut up. They want to protect their country. It's their country. You can't tell them what to do. And this has gone too far. Globalism has gone too far, where you have whether international institutions like the European Union or UN, or individuals, philanthropists like Bill Gates, telling countries how to live their own lives and how to manage their own affairs. This has gone way too far. All right, so there's a quick super chat before we continue. Greg Smith, thank you so much, from Canada, I believe. The socialists, the National Socialists in Germany would confiscate Jewish wealth. When they ran out of Jews, they started going after the rich Germans' wealth. Socialist Marxists did the same thing with it. Absolutely. So again, the perfect example of the worst case scenario when it comes to socialism and Islamism is a country like Iran, what they did. It was a paramilitary coup in 1979, and then they told the Western media at the time, for those of you if you were alive back then, they said, oh, by the way, CNN, BBC, this is a people's revolution. What people? 1979 had nothing to do with the People's Revolution in Iran. You literally have the footage right now showing that you had the paramilitary people with weapons going around targeting innocent people, as well as the Shah and the government. And then afterwards, the moment it happened, you had people in Iran on the streets saying, we regret this. Can you go? Can you bring back the Shah? And they said, no, it's too late now. We are here. And they had this fake referendum where I believe 7% or 99.7% of people allegedly voted for the Islamic Republic. By the way, the question was, it wasn't really a choice in the referendum in 1979. The referendum basically said, fake referendum, do you like the Islamic Republic, yes or no? That's the only option you had. You didn't really have an option. Do you want parliamentary democracy? Do you want monarchy? Do you want republic? No. None of that was relevant, apparently. Anyway, so these guys are doing their job without international support. They continue to get betrayed by the Western globalists like Joe Biden and all the others, because it's not in the interests of the West right now, or the Western lefties, liberals, to want a free and independent Iran. They would rather have that region to remain chaotic but weak. But if Iran becomes free and independent and democratic, then it will become strong. And they don't like that. Last time it happened, when they were allies to the Shah became a big ally to Israel. And you had Jimmy Carter. And the Americans did not like it really much, because they had the oil contracts to deal with. But they also had all the other threats around Israel. They said they were arrogant. They said, Israel belongs to us. We don't like this new friendship between the Shah of Iran and Israel. I love how they still saw it as a new friendship. This was not a new friendship. The Persians and the Jews have historic links and friendships. Goes back to Cyrus the Great, who freed them from the Babylonians. And no, apparently the people in the West, the Western leadership, still don't get it. right now on the streets of all our countries in the world, where you have the pro-Israeli rallies, you have the flags of the Persian flag of Iran, the original flag before the revolution and the uprising, as well as the Israeli flag going hand in hand. And I can imagine there's an element of the Western liberal globalists who are not happy about this. That's why they are not sending any support to the Iranians, despite the fact that you had, again, the leftists, as well as basically anti-Westerners and the Iranian regime themselves with their propaganda machine and CCP spreading this nonsense over the last couple of years, and that didn't work. Basically, they've been going around saying, oh, these protests you are seeing in Iran, they're not genuine protests. They are actually funded by CIA, and oh yes, the Americans who want to do revolution. Are you kidding me with this? The same Joe Biden who keeps giving you money, the same Joe Biden and Barack Hussein Obama and all the others and Hillary Clinton who betrayed every single uprising that the Iranian people have done. Yeah, of course the Americans want a revolution in Iran. Bunch of idiots. And there are some other idiots who believe this nonsense here. Because humanity, one of the weaknesses that we have is that all you have to sell us is an older story. So whether it's the Bigfoot or the monster under your bed, the same thing repeats itself. So for example, the recent story, well, the old but recent, is if you mention the British Empire, you can criticize whatever Britain does now, even ordinary British people. If you mention, for example, CIA making a mess back in the 20th century, doing some coup d'etats and all that nonsense, then you can just use that against whatever we're doing now. They don't understand. Well, they do understand. They know exactly what they're doing. Times have changed. And that game has changed. So yes, they still have the Western globalists and Eastern globalists as well stirring the pot, but they're doing it differently now. So when, for the first time, you now have the Iranians trying to correct their own mistakes, and then when they are hearing in the international media that, hang on, do the people around the world think that it's not us, we don't have agency, it's that CIA is helping us to win this? They get insulted, and it's absolutely insulting. You literally also have, in Iran, despite propaganda, one of the things that the regime have been doing for the past couple of years is, since the uprising, is to paint flags of Israel and America, for example, as a symbol of Satan, to get people to walk on the flags. You know how in this country and in the West we paint LGBT flags, the pride flags, the crossings, and apparently that's supposed to be a nice thing, but in a normal country, in a normal society, that's actually an insult. If you walk on a flag, it's an insult. So in Iran, they paint those flags of Israel, for example, and America, for people and students and everybody else to inevitably walk on them, so they could film it and use it as propaganda. But Iranians are very smart, and they are very resistant to authority. They are refusing to walk on these flags. And I'm going to show you one clip, and when one or two of them walk on them, they basically heckle them, they boo them. Let's go to this.
Oh, کجا؟ بیشرف 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 بیشرف
See the reaction when essentially the pro-regime people and the thugs who are part of the Revolutionary Guard ended up walking on them, the couple of them. Everybody else started basically booing and shouting, saying, what are you doing? Because they see the Jews, ordinary Israelis, as well as the ordinary Westerners as their allies. The reason they're defending the American flag is not because they love Biden or Obama or the White House. It's because they want to send a message to the world that we are your friend, to all the other ordinary people in the West. And of course, at the same time, none of this matters when you don't have the international support, when you don't have the Western and international media not giving you guys a voice. And this is what they're dealing with right now. So they're going around, obviously, the first videos we showed you vocally fighting against both the faith of Islam as well as the political ideology of Islamism. And at the same time, those who are here from Iran, for example, that there are a lot of Iranian refugees who integrated enough, but they still see themselves as a guest. And they are very grateful to be here or in America or France, but they've been very clear that the moment Iran becomes free and independent and democratic, they want to go back. And they will say their thank you to their new, obviously the current home here, but they don't want to mess up the West either, because they believe that they'll be better off going back to Iran, build Iran, rebuild Iran, and then become an ally to the rest of the world. Now, there is a lot of vested interest here that doesn't want it to happen. So you have an element of what we would call liberal Western globalists, who would rather have that region to remain weak and chaotic. There's also an element of the Eastern globalists, led by people like President Xi and Assad and Putin and everybody else, because they want to oppose the Western side. Essentially, countries like Iran or the Iranian people become basically the tool for both sides and a weapon to play against each other. So they don't want Iran to be free, the likes of Russia and China. They don't want it to be free either. But of course, the likes of Biden also don't want it to be free, because again, it'll be chaotic. And it's also going to be very awkward, because over the last few decades, the Western system put all its eggs in one basket, which was Saudi Arabia. We became allies of Saudi, and in order to oppose Iran. And it became a chaotic thing, considering that essentially the Western side, to a point, created this current Iran by having CIA training the Ayatollahs, by having Paris and France supporting it, and elements of the MI6 as well. These guys literally created the Islamic Republic of Iran. They betrayed their own ally, and they started going around sending propaganda. And a lot of kids believed it over the last few decades, saying, oh yeah, the Shah was a puppet of America. All that has happened. There's so much of history that's been completely missold to the world, and no one has been challenging this. But now we have one man, the Crown Prince of Iran in exile, Reza Pahlavi, who's the son of the last Shah, who's rightful king essentially. He's leading the movement now, and for the first time in a long time, there is a general consensus by Iranians inside and outside to let him be their voice and their advocates. He's been very clear that he's not running for office, and he simply wants to be leading the movement to bring back the Persian constitution, to bring back democracy. So whether it's going to be parliamentary democracy, whether it's going to be republic, which again, it wouldn't really work in a country like Iran. Iranians are like the English. By culture, unless you change the culture completely, randomly saying republic wouldn't really work, neither in Britain nor in Iran. You have to implement it slowly, you have to actually sell it to people. But, and I know a lot of people are not really pro-monarchy, this is not really to defend monarchy, it's simply to say we're not ready to randomly change the system, we're not the French. But we have to talk about the truth. We have to talk about who brought these people in place in the first place. Obviously, those who funded it initially, which were the communists in Soviet Union. And then the same Ayatollahs, and especially the main one, Ayatollah Khomeini, who was in exile in Paris, because the Shah of Iran couldn't really get rid of him, because they said, well, he's just a nice old man. It's just misguided. The Shah of Iran was naive to think that. And he thought that the Westerners will still continue to support him. But what the CIA saw, what France saw, what MI6 saw was there was a rise of, in the Cold War period, there was a rise of the commies in Iran who were leading this uprising and the paramilitary coup. And they thought, okay, we could just burn the Shah right now, just get rid of him. But in order to prevent the Soviet commies from taking over Iran, sort of like what they were trying to do in Afghanistan, let's get indirectly behind this nice old man and the Ayatollah Khomeini to say, well, let him be in charge, and maybe they could be our next puppets. That backfired massively, because the next day, the same Islamic Republic and Ayatollah's people came on the street and said, death to America, and death to Britain, and death to Israel. And then Jimmy Carter and everybody else were like, oh, what have you done? You literally had, it's still on YouTube, one of the debates, presidential debates between Ronald Reagan and of course the Carter side and the Democrats Reagan said, it is still on YouTube if you want to search for it. He said one of the biggest mistakes that the previous government in America made under Carter was this, the betrayal of their own partner. And there is also a massive misperception about that period. People say, oh, the Shah was a puppet of America. No. Originally, obviously, we had the previous dad, the original Reza Shah, the first of the dynasty, who became, without choosing, the puppet of Britain and Russia from the north, Britain from the south. And when the son came, the last Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, he basically essentially picked up the phone to America saying, can you come and help us get rid of the Brits and the Soviet and BP, and we'll deal with you, we'll have oil contracts and everything else. And that happened. And of course, there was an element of Americans who were trying to control the Shah, but the Shah went rogue. The Shah became independent. The Shah said, well, thank you. You want to buy our oil? You have to pay for the oil now and everything else. And he used the money to modernize Iran. And then some people say he went too fast. And then obviously you had the radicals who took over. Let's go to the live chat quickly. Get your reaction as well. Kevin says the Iranian leadership are evil, pure evil. But they're also, let's not forget, one of the points about the Islamic Republic of Iran, we always talk about the Taliban, we talk about ISIS and all the others, Al-Qaeda. While Iranian leadership are Shias, they're not Sunni, they are the original believers in modern days, original believers of the Islamic State. They want to be behind the creation of the Islamic State, one world government under Islam. And the problem is, for them, is that they are Shias. And the majority of Muslims around the world are Sunnis. So the Sunnis are not going to listen to a Shia-led Islamic State. So the objective of the Iranian regime changed. They said, okay, well, we can't really proactively lead or advocate for a Shia-led Islamic State. So what we're going to do, enemy of an enemy is a friend. So they became friends with the Sunnis and all the other types of Muslims, including Bashar al-Assad. And obviously now they've taken control of Iraq. And you have, again, technically Hamas, because Hamas are not Shia. Hezbollah are Shia, but Hamas are Sunni. So Iranians decided, the Iranian regime, the Islamic occupiers of Iran, decided to change their strategy. This comment believes the faith teaches hatred, chaos, and evil. Ban it permanently. We also have a cat saying Islam does not fit in Christian lands. This is absolutely spot on, by the way. Whether you like it or not, you can still have nice Muslim friends, but it is very true. It suits the people who believe in it, and that's fine, just doesn't belong here. The other problem with this, by the way, what Kat said is correct. One issue with it is that those, and there are still some people who say now, oh no, the Islam is fine. As long as they stay in their place, just leave it there. You do realize you can't ignore it. The whole point of the ideology is the first original idea to promote one world government. You can't leave it alone. You can't say, oh, if only George W. Bush hadn't gone there. Oh, if only Jimmy Carter hadn't done this. If they would have become stronger and faster, and they would have come here anyway. I'm not saying that advocate for the Western interventions in the Middle East. No. That's also a terrible idea. But you can't just leave it alone either. Look what happened in Spain all those centuries ago. The Crusades had to happen to kick him out again. And then there's this tradition that happened in Spain after, obviously, the whole Crusades battles and everything else, which then became a tradition for a long time. When you want to have lunch in Spain at the time, it became a routine where they obviously serve you certain things in terms of food and drinks or alcohol or basically bacon to subtly check if you're one of them or not. if you're still basically a Muslim hanging around in Spain or not. But they want to bring it back. The thing is, this time, they didn't even have to have the Islamic armies to take over the West. We actually opened the door. We said, would you like to come in? We literally had Germany, Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, Britain, Canada, US, Australia, everywhere, apart from Poland. Well done, Poland. They all said, would you like to come in? Maybe we can civilize you. In a patronizing way, we thought, oh, you come from the third world, it's okay. Come to London. We'll get you a job and some benefits and some free Sky TV and maybe we could help them. Maybe if you bring them here, they become educated and prosperous and civilized and everything's going to be fine. Of course, those from the Arab world who could relatively live among us here were those who were already educated and prosperous and more middle class in the Arab world. They were fine. We had in the 20th century, we had people from Saudi and Kuwait, for example, coming here. And they were the ones who originally created Edgware Road in London. It was the Arab road. That was fine, relatively speaking, because they were educated and became prosperous back home. So when they came to the West, they were already essentially familiar with the Western system. But the rest of them that we brought here, we thought, okay, maybe this could be a good thing. This is the idea of the globalists who want to basically, essentially create this illusion of one human race and one world government, like a Star Trek fantasy world. They thought, well, if we could just bring them here, mix them with our people, because our countries are already prosperous, we could help both sides. We could get our people to become progressive and open-minded to other cultures. They could have curry, and we could also make the others civilized. This didn't work. It's not a good idea. Stephen, thank you very much for your super chat saying Islam is completely incompatible with Western values. Spot on. What should we have to fit in with incomers? They should adapt adopted country. I mean, this is spot on. That's the other thing I've been saying recently, especially since the Israel conflict started. The way it looks is that when they talk about integration, the liberal side, they essentially mean we need to integrate with them, the newcomers. It should be their job. Also, I just missed the first super chat beginning of the live stream. I can't believe Angels of Death, one of our regulars, apologies, saying, "All hell, my future leader of the British Empire." British Empire. Yes, we will make the British Empire great again together, Angels of Death. I also missed another one. There we go, Free Rider. Don't worry, if I miss a super chat, I'll scroll back, find them somehow, and I'll go back to the normal chat as well. Thank you very much, Free Rider. I really hope that this will be an eye-opener and start a movement in other countries like Lebanon and others that have been torn apart by the extremists. Well, the issue we have is that it's case by case. So in some countries, we've been making them rich by force. So that is the strategy the West used with Saudi Arabia, UAE, and those sort of countries. You could technically say, academically say, it's one of the better examples of Western intervention. So we kept their own establishments in place, the Saudi family and UAE and all the others. We just simply made them rich by buying their oil and everything else. And inevitably, more people in those countries, inevitably, not everybody, more people have become more prosperous and educated. So the reason that Saudi Arabia gave rights to women to drive was not because they suddenly became liberal woke or and it's like suddenly they woke up and became kind of a progressive, but it was because in any society, especially under dictatorships, where you create more middle classes and more educated people, you can't really kick them anymore. You can only do that if the peasants remain peasants. So in Saudi, more people became middle classes and educated, including women. So they thought, well, we can't really kick them anymore. Not everything is perfect in Saudi, obviously, but it's just step by step. So that's a strategy to deal with those type of countries that still have their establishments in place. In other countries, we've already made a mess by removing the existing secular dictator, thinking that we could introduce democracy. That didn't work, did it? That was a stupid idea. Holotap, thank you very much, saying you can get the savages out of the crime gang, but you can't get the crime gang out of savages. Yes, I agree. Let's go back. Oh, there's a comment about integration, if I could find it again. Stella Knight says that in the 70s and 80s, Pakistanis and Indians integrated quite well. So the one thing that we could say about 60s, 70s and 80s, most immigration in this country, most of it was from the Commonwealth. And at the time, Pakistanis were essentially the west side of, southwest side of India. And so they were still familiar with what the British Empire basically introduced in that region. So inevitably, a lot of the people who came from the Commonwealth or the old colonies, they found it easier to integrate if they chose. But now we have a different problem. So the first generation of people coming into Britain, for example, from countries that were not colonies, so the Islamic countries, for example, a lot of them, they can't integrate, or they refuse to integrate. But now we also have a problem where new generation of so-called colonies and the Commonwealth, that includes, like for example, Pakistanis, who are born here now, and their dad was born here, they are more isolated than a first-generation migrant from any other place. And that, again, is the problem of bringing in too many different cultures at once, and they're all clashing. You got the Hindus and Muslims, you got this and that, and everybody's hating everybody, but they have one common thing, which is basically hating Britishness and Englishness and basically the identity of the country. That's the one thing they have in common, which has been promoted by the liberal left and the woke left. Anyway, this is the update we had on this issue. If you missed the beginning of the live stream, feel free to scroll back, because we had the actual footage of the Iranians fighting back against the Islam and Islamism. We're going to come back later on. We're going to talk about the latest update from China. We got this pneumonia case that's now apparently the outbreak is spreading around the Western world, Western Europe, and cases also in the United States. We're going to give you guys all the updates on what we know so far. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.